Time for the World Economic Forum again, and Great Reset talk. Obviously, will be on the tips and lips and minds of everybody. And here's a little bit of something that you might not know, but the origins of the Great Reset started in 1944. And sadly to say, it's something that will actually be needed. And let me explain, and I'll tell you why. And feel free to disagree with me if you like, but the numbers won't actually lie. So in 1944, after the war, once we had the Great Depression and the collapse, Great Depression, countries got together and decided, how can we stop this sort of thing from happening again? That is rampant up and down, rampant up and down. So it was decided, 1944, Bretton Woods, the United States would have X amount of dollars per ounce of gold. So if the country wanted more dollars, it needed more gold. So that's those two are intricately linked. Then everyone else would stem the value of their currency off the United States currency, which was based on the gold. So you knew the United States was kind of fixed to how much currency they could have in circulation. So 1944, Bretton Woods. Then we had the baby boomers. Okay, now the baby boomers created a little bit of a problem, because when you looked at the old population chart back then, it looked like a mushroom with the baby boomers up here and everyone else there. So you had a nice little tree trunk with this baby boomer bulge and a tree trunk. So the bulge of age groups were going up. Now that's fantastic. It means every age group, as they get to whatever the age group buys, those businesses flourish, and as they move on, those businesses perish. But that means that when those people get to old age and pension age, if they're all on the social welfare pension, that's going to be a big drain for everybody underneath. So we have to rectify that. Now, it also meant that as those people start to get into buying ages of houses and things like that, you have this big swathe of people trying to buy things. Now, we leave them for the moment and we have a look at the banks. Now, banks are like all businesses. They sell a product, and the product they sell is a debt product. And like all businesses, they can only make more money three ways. You sell to more people, you sell more often to the same people, or you sell for more margin to the people who you do sell to. They're the only three ways any business can make extra money. Okay, so you reach a situation where you might be in a little bit of financial trouble. The banks need to borrow money, or they need to make money, but they're restricted on how much they can make. Plus, there's a population problem underneath the baby boomers, so it needs to be rectified. So the first thing that gets done is the immigration policy changes. This enables more people to come into the country and fill up under the baby boomers. So that's fantastic. But it does a couple of other things as well. It means that the banks have more customers, which increases product sales, debt sales. Now, that's great. But remember, the US dollar was tied to the gold. If you don't have enough gold to generate extra dollars, I need another bar of gold to generate X amount of dollars. If I don't have that, my money in circulation is stuck. Now I've got all these extra people coming in and they all want loans. If they can't have the loans and money can't be just manufactured out of thin air to cater to their demand for money, the public is demanding the money. If I can't manufacture that money and I can't mine gold quick enough to allow me to print the dollars, then the money circulation slows. So Bretton Woods was the first chance to kick the financial collapse can down the road. Then we had the immigration policy change, which kicks the financial collapse can down the road further. Now, all loans are advances on your future income with interest attached. Now, how do you pay back more than you borrow? In a fixed money system, you can't do that. But in a system where there's more coming in all the time, we'll call that an inflationary system, you can do that. But inflation has a detrimental end, obviously, which would collapse the system. So we have to kick the can down the road. And if people can't borrow because we don't have enough money, we have financial collapse because there's no money circulating around. Because when I borrow money, I spend it, and that my spendings becomes somebody else's earnings, and they use those earnings to justify a loan, which they then spend. So we're basically in a debt backed by debt system. So how do you increase that? You go off the gold standard. So we've done that in 1971. So that's fantastic. We can now print more money, which is great. Why are we printing more money? Because people are demanding more money, and you've got this big swathe of baby boomers coming through. Okay, so once we've done that, how else? We need more and more money circulating in the system. We convince women to go into the workforce and stop being single family units. Why that's great for the bank's point of view is it means that each family unit can now borrow more. So we've got more people coming into the country, plus the couples that are there are now borrowing more. So those two things fit the bank's purposes. The customers are borrowing more, and you have more people to sell your debt product to. So things are fantastic. So this is why you constantly need this immigration input, so that banks have ever more people to loan money to, which they then spend into the system, and around we keep on going. So we've kicked that can a little bit further down the road. But at some point, you're always going to reach an element where people are tapped out. If they can't borrow any more, to stimulate their borrowing, you have to lower the interest rates. And this is a game that you can only play so much. And like all things currently, the interest rates go lower, then people borrow more, because their income capacity says they can borrow more because interest rates are lower. But you'll always reach this point where people are tapped out again. And how do we stimulate the borrowing again? We have to come up with another loan product. So one of the more recent ones is that new home buyers can use their parents' equity as their deposit. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to buy a house. That's important, because if they can't buy the house sales slump, less money's borrowed, system collapses. If everyone stops borrowing money, system collapses. So we have to kick the can further down the road. We have this new loan product. New home buyers can borrow the deposit from their parents' equity. Great, we've kicked the can down the road again. If we don't keep kicking the can down the road, we have a financial collapse. Now, before 1944 Bretton Woods, there were many financial collapses. The Great Depression that we know of in the 20th century, 1900s, that depression was not the first Great Depression. There was one before that in the 1800s. And there were many financial collapses within the 1800s. So coming into the 1900s, nothing's different. We've got peaks and collapses, but after 1944, we don't have that collapse. So we have had over 70 years of prosperity without a rectifying collapse to tone that down. Now, when the collapse does happen, because you can't keep inflating forever, you cannot inflate your way out of debt. When it would happen, we would have an even greater depression, which would require a great reset. That's where the name comes from. They didn't make that up. Well, they did make it up, but that is why, because we would have an even greater depression. Now, unfortunately, we're at a situation now where interest rates hit rock bottom. House prices in the 70s and 80s were 3 to 4 times income, and they're now as much as 12 times income. It's not affordable for people. But once they have reached that unaffordability and stop buying houses, the loans aren't coming. There's no loans. People can't take that advance on their future income, spend it into the system, and circulate the money around. The loans just dry up. And when that happens, financial collapse. So in that sense, this is why we kind of need the Great Reset, only in as much as it's another method to kick the can down the road. Now, when the financial collapse happens, sorry to tell everybody, but it's everybody's fault for taking out loans. But if they didn't take out loans, the system collapses. By everyone taking out loans and borrowing and living their consumerism lifestyle, we've just kicked the collapse can a little bit further down the road. Mathematically, the system is always going to collapse. Now, the middle classes, the bottom classes, they didn't create this system. The top created the system. Now, if everybody realised that the system is doomed to fail from the beginning, they might jump up and down. So you always need a scapegoat. It failed for some reason over here or some reason over there or a particular reason. So in this case, we've got the Rona, and we can say everybody's economies was devastated because of the Rona. It's a convenient scapegoat to blame the collapse on the Rona and not the system itself. And then once that happens, the financial wizards can come along and they can say, well, here's how we need to fix it with a Great Reset. And I'll cover that in another video, but this is why it's called the Great Reset, and this is why, unfortunately, we do need something. Otherwise, we will end up in an even greater depression.